And that just goes to show you always need to be ready for that first mistake. Yep. Oh, feels like I am getting a little bit of movement. There's no other way to say it than that I am delinquent on the first service with this zero-turn lawnmower. I've had this thing just about 2 years, and after a little research on when to do the first oil change, I found out that Kawasaki recommends that for this FR691V motor, that the first oil change happens in the first 5 hours of service. However, I'm currently at 17 hours and I have never changed the oil. This job is actually not that difficult, but one thing that I have seen everywhere that I've done research is that you want to have a Kawasaki branded oil filter, and of course Kawasaki 4-stroke 10W40 motor oil. I have 2 quarts here. I have a 3rd quart because some folks have used 2.2 quarts. Other folks have just used a straight 2 quarts. So I will measure that at the end of the video and see exactly how much fluid I require. And the first step for this oil change is I'm going to go ahead and get the motor warmed up, not necessarily to warm up the temperature of the oil, but I want to circulate the oil enough so that any metal particles are suspended when I drain it, so I get as much of that junk and gunk out of the engine as possible. So let's get started. So this is the Kawasaki FR691V engine. This engine is very common to many of the zero-turn motors that are out there on the market today. And over on the front passenger side, we have our dipstick, and just below that is our oil filter. Now the drain plug right here is very easy to open. You can use a small flat tip screwdriver, and there's a little opening right here that will drain across the frame and through a hole. Now, something that could improve this job overall is I've got that opening, that circle right there. The oil is gonna slide down the frame and then through this little hole right here into my drain pan. So if I was truly prepared for this job, I would have bought something like a 1/2 inch or maybe a 5/8 inch diameter hose that I could attach to that drain. That way I could drain it straight into my drain pan without getting my frame dirty. Luckily for me, the frame does have that small channel where the oil will drain without making too much of a mess. So I will be able to wipe everything up at the end, and it shouldn't cause me too many problems. I'm not gonna pull the dipstick out all the way, but what I wanna do is just unscrew it. That'll allow it to have no vacuum so that when I do open the drain, everything will be able to drain out very easily. Now I'm just gonna make sure that I have my drain pan under here. That way I don't lose any oil or dirty up my driveway too bad. There's a couple of ways you could open this drain plug. It is a 10mm socket head, and it also has the ability to use a flat tip screwdriver. For me, since I have this stubby flat tip screwdriver, I'm gonna go ahead and try, and oh good, okay. I don't want to go too crazy with this thing, but now that I got it loose, turn it with my finger. There we go.
Uh-oh, it's getting all over the concrete.
And that just goes to show you always need to be ready for that first mistake. In this case, I put too much faith in that channel on the frame, and now I have a huge mess that I'm gonna have to deal with later. But not to worry, I'm gonna let this thing sit for about an hour. As much of that oil as possible is gonna drain out of the engine, drain off of the lawnmower and into my 2 pans here, and then I'll wipe it off and see how it looks. So that's not embarrassing at all. I made a huge mess. I will, of course, clean this mess up. Usually what I do is I'll just pour some sand on that. But now that I'm mostly drained, I'm just getting a little bit of drips, and I think the drips are really all from the frame itself. I'm gonna go ahead and try to remove this oil filter. Before I use a tool, I just wanna see if I can give it a good crank with my hands. Oh, feels like I am getting a little bit of movement, so I don't need a tool. And getting a little bit of spins here. Once I get that broke free, I'm also just gonna let this sit for a second and continue to drain. Now that I've got most of the oil drained, I've cleaned up a little bit. I can tell there's more dripping down there. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab this oil filter, open it up, and I want to lube up the O-ring. Now to lube up the gasket, most folks will use brand new oil. In this case, I'm just going to take a little drop from the used oil here just to give myself a nice little layer. Now I don't necessarily want a whole bunch of oil on here, just enough so that when it first makes contact with the face of the engine, that it can slide a little bit without twisting the gasket. If it doesn't slide a little, it will put a little bit of torque on the gasket, and with vibration it could back up a little bit, and so I want to avoid that. Now that I've got that nice and lubed up, I'm just going to get this in there and spin it on. Nice and gentle at first. The main thing to keep in mind is, in fact, it's easy to cross thread. I'm making sure my threads are straight. Now that I've got them on, I can just spin it nice and easy. I've made contact, and since I've made contact, I'm just going to give it a good, just a little bit more than a quarter of a turn, and that thing should be perfect. In fact, I can see the word Kawasaki in the part number right there on the top. So when I go to check this, I'll put that K right as high as I can. The K is at top dead center, and so I'll check that later. If this moves at all, I'll know based on that K. I went ahead and tightened up that drain plug. The drain plug I felt was sufficient, just being hand tight as much as I could tighten it. To try to get ahead of my little mistake that I made there at the beginning, I went ahead and lifted the mower up, put this block of wood under there. That helped redirect the oil back to the rear of the engine. But my number one advice for this job is, if you're gonna do it, go ahead and get that hose from the beginning. That way you can just route the oil to wherever you want it to drain to. So it seems like I buy a new funnel every time I do a job like this, but I can never seem to find them. Luckily, I have this transmission funnel that I keep around all the time, and I know exactly where that's at. And so I'm just gonna wipe this out, get any major dust out of it, and then go ahead and top off my oil. For this job, since I know the minimum is 2 quarts and the maximum is 2.2 quarts, I'm gonna go ahead and gently dump in. And I don't wanna go too fast because I wanna allow time for the oil to drain into the crankcase. Just dump in the 2 quarts and then I will run it for a moment and check it. I haven't even checked the level yet, and I can already tell by the way the engine sounds that I definitely should have changed that oil sooner. Checking the oil on the Kawasaki FR691V, you want to have the oil in between the add line and the full line. In addition to that, when you put the dipstick in the tube, you don't want to screw it in at all. You want, for a correct oil level, do not turn cap on threads. I'm just going to gently put this in because I don't want to splash oil anywhere. Got that lined up, and I feel like I'm within tolerance. You guys can probably barely tell, but the oil is right there. Now that the oil's done, let's go ahead and ride around a little bit. Let's cut some grass, and then I'll check it one more time. It came out pretty good for that first check, but I'm not 100% convinced, so let's find out if I need to ride it some more to circulate a little more oil into that filter. I just mowed for a little bit. The engine is cooling off. I just wanted to check that mower, check that oil level one last time after about just 20 minutes of mowing. I mowed actually the other day, and that's really when I decided, hey, I need to check or change the oil in this engine. But even after that, I'm still looking pretty good. I'm right there in the line, so perfect oil. Let me know what you think about the video in the comments. I did make a few mistakes, but overall, I just want to show you, hey, first time changing the oil on this Kawasaki FR691V. What is the process for that? I made a few mistakes, so hopefully when you change your oil, you don't make those same mistakes. If you like the video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in my next adventure.